Hello friends, my name is Rocky Outcrop. This is an educational video. In today's show, we'll be talking about the ICHIMOKU cloud. How fantastic is that? I hear you saying, yes, very fantastic. But there's a few of you out there who are saying, hold on a second, Rocky. There are already hundreds, literally hundreds of videos about the ICHIMOKU cloud and how to trade it by every single person. Hey guys, even including that guy, right? Hey guys, Rainer, he's got a great voice. I think he's a funny dude. And there's everybody's done a video, including that guy, because it made me a millionaire in my 20s. He's such an ass. So everybody's done one already. What could I bring to the table which is any different? Well, believe me, we will be doing things slightly differently in today's show. And I'm just going to shrink myself down into the corner here. Don't worry, I'm not disappearing. Let me just do that real quick. Ooh, here I am, still here. There's my name, Rocky Outcrop. Remember, you can tell all your friends and all that. You can subscribe. It's great stuff here. And here's this badge from the gods of technical analysis to say, yo man, you're doing a good job, 100% quality, all that stuff. It's official. What is this behind me? This is a completely clean Ethereum Usd chart. Now, it could be any chart that we're using in the world. I just happen to be using this Ethereum USD one to make this video. And we will discuss throughout the video, of course, the little sort of nuances that exist about this thing as we go along. But let's start off with a look at what the ICHIMOKU cloud is. Or should we? No, let's not. Let's make this video different, I hear you saying, to all the other ones that are out there on YouTube already. Okay, so if you've never seen the ICHIMOKU cloud before, you will. Don't worry, that'll come up in this video, right? And if you've seen it a whole bunch of times, yeah, that's great. I'm sure you're relieved to not have to live through somebody else explaining the different components of the cloud to begin with and just to get into the nitty gritty. Here we are. Remember, by the way, people, you're more than welcome to hit the like button and the subscribe button and the share button and tell all your friends about this great quality content. More than welcome. Right, okay, so how are we going to do this then? Let me just break down the individual components of the ICHIMOKU cloud using the price action to form up the same sort of information that the cloud is presenting to us. Then put the cloud back on. You'll understand where the information came from. You'll understand what the cloud is, therefore, yada yada, all good stuff. Right, good one. Okay, let's do it then. Let's just bring up the, I'll just unhide these drawings, and you'll notice I've got these vertical lines down the way. Now, okay, so what are these? Why have I done that? Well, these are quite simply today, 9 days ago, 26 days ago, and 52 days ago, right? And the ICHIMOKU cloud looks back this far in terms of periods, okay? This is the daily chart that I'm looking at, so I've drawn that out 9 days ago. If you're using the ICHIMOKU cloud on the 2-day time frame, then you'd be looking at 2-day periods, so the 9 period effect of the ICHIMOKU cloud, we'd be looking back 18, of course, you know, etc., etc. It's periods, not days, right? But here we are, and we're on the daily chart, and we're going to be looking at the ICHIMOKU cloud on the daily chart, and I've written out these things. Great. Everybody's with me. And so the ICHIMOKU cloud looks as far back as 52 days. That's as far back as it ever looks. Now, of course, it remains on the chart. So as you look back at the previous stuff printed onto the chart, it shows you the previous information, of course, but the current calculations for it at any given time are going to be looking back as far as 52 periods and then 26 periods. 26 is half of 52. If I hide this 9-day line, it makes that even more obvious. As you can see, we've got this big box. Halfway down the box is this other line here. And then as well, looking back 9 days. And we make comparisons between how the prices is doing, you know, now versus what it's been up to in the previous 9 days, now versus what it's been up to in the previous 26 days, and now versus what it's been up to in the previous 52 days, and takes the information from this price action to formulate that information for us. Okay, so that's the basic construction of it. Now, in terms of the sort of the usage methodology of this thing, how does this information help us? Well, just knowing that we're making a comparison between, of course, where the price is now in relation to all these different historical timeframes, and of course then where the price has been during these periods compared to where it has been during the bigger periods. Now, let's just be very clear clear on this little point right now, that all the comparisons in the Ichimoku cloud, there are comparing the price action, for instance, in this rectangle, not to the price action in this distinct rectangle here, you know, not just this 9 period versus the 26 period starting from 9 periods ago, that is looking at it in comparison to this period, you know, from now until 26 days ago, and then be very clear and say as well that when we're making comparisons with the 52 period, we're looking at how the price action is performed now versus how it's performed in the 9 days up to now versus how it's performed in the 26 days up to now versus how it's performed in the 52 days up to now. Not isolated chunks of time where it's like, how did it perform in those 52 days? How did it perform in those 26 days? And how did it perform in those 9 days? Okay, so there's another key understanding for this thing for you to take away, just so that you get a real good idea, solid idea of where these things all come from. I'll just hide those rectangles out. We don't really need them right now. Okay, what if we wanted to do a few basic things then? How could we do it? What are we looking to do here when we're analyzing price anyway? We're going to be looking at the highs and lows. Okay, the highs and lows. Let's just mark them off for now, and we'll go in from left to right. Let's mark in the highest periods, the highest highs and lows. Let's take away these lines here, make this easier. The highest high and the lowest low in this 52-day period. Okay, so this is kind of essentially looking at the comparison for this rectangle here. In this period of time, what are the highs and the lows? And we can mark them in quite easily. Here's the high right up here. It was, of course, as it happens, 52 days ago, which does, you know, obviously lead into, and I'll just mention it now rather than doing it sort of structurally at the end. A limitation of this thing is that you're looking back, 52 days. In the next day or two, these calculations will obviously no longer include this number. In fact, the highest high will then become this number over here. And then the day after that, it'll become this number over here. And then the day after that, it'll become this number over here. Will it? Well, no, because we have a high in there already a little bit higher. So the next wee while, what we're looking at is the number moving from there to there to there and then to there. And it then obviously all this period of time doesn't really, matter that there wasn't another high higher than it over here because we've had one recently. Now, that obviously speaks to trend in and of itself, but we don't need to break that down. It's just so that you know the construction and how this thing works. And when you're looking at the trend of something, how the trend works, that you're looking at extending beyond highs and lows of a period, looking back the way and saying that we're either higher or lower than them, therefore we're trending more or less than them in those specific periods of time. Simple as that. That's what we're looking at here. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because whether you're familiar with the Ichimoku Cloud already or not, having that as a key understanding as well along the way will make everything else easier. Now, I do appreciate that we're doing this completely, the other way around. In fact, here's a wee story for you. Back in the is it 80s or 90s or something, the Americans sold the Japanese some Hornets of their Tomcat planes, right? Anyway, one of you guys that knows more about planes can tell me the story back the way. Was it the F-16? I don't know, something like that, right? One of these planes, they're planes and they shoot other planes down. Pretty nifty. And they were so good at making them. The Japanese were like, here, take all of our money. We want lots of your planes, please. And then what the Japanese went ahead and did was that they reversed engineered the thing, made it better, and then were able to sell technology back to the Americans on how to improve their plane, license it to them, no less, as well. So they had to keep paying for it over the years because they were able to take it apart and put it back together again in a good way. Well, that's what we're doing here with the Ichimoku Cloud. Okay, we're taking it apart and putting it back together again, understanding how the feckin' F-16 over here works, where its missiles get shot out from, and then we'll obviously be able to make the bloody thing better. Now, we won't make the bloody thing better. We'll just understand it, right? You can go make it better if you want to. So let's put in the other ones then. We've got this other period here, this low. In fact, this is probably going to end up being more than half an hour, isn't it? What are we now? 9 minutes. Well, so we're we're looking down here. This is the low of the previous 52 days, and as we look towards the future, we can see that while the price action came up here and up here and up here, that because there's this other low down here, that as we move forward in a handful of days, that the lowest low that we'll be able to look back on over 52 periods in the future will be, of course, here at that point, because of all this, right? Okay, great, nice one. So that's the highest high and the highest low of the previous 52 days. What about the next low then, looking back from the previous 26 days? Let me just put in the 26-day marker here. So from this far back, where's our previous low in at here? And we can see that it came in just here. Let's mark that one off as well. Okay, so we know where the lowest low was in the previous 52 days, and we know where the lowest low was in the previous 26 days. Groovy. Let's mark in the next area. This is the lowest low in the previous 9 days. Now, as we discussed when I was talking about this 52-day, the highest high, and how in a couple of days' time, these candles won't be included in this calculation any longer, but this one here being so high will be the next one that we go to, then we already know the answer to this question. What was the highest high in the last 9 days? And of course, it was up here. Now, this is the highest high in the last 26 days as well, and it's not the highest high in the last 52 days. That was up over there, okay? Pop. There we go. So now we've got this sort of the key components to understanding, in terms of the range of things. Now, a little history lesson for you. This thing was made in 1969. Back then, computers were obviously pretty crap. To be able to actually draw this thing out fairly quickly, you've been able to have constructed tools that kind of looked similar to these sorts of things that we're doing just now in order to kind of, pop one on top of a price chart that somebody's already created. Of course, you could. I'm sure the Japanese would have done that. Now, I've not seen one of these devices, but I'm pretty sure you could have made one fairly easily. And yes, but computers weren't a thing. Then of course, J. Wells Wilder Jr. wrote his book about the RSI and the DMI and the true range and all this sort of stuff. And trading really kind of take on this new, more modern approach to things, which actually allowed computers to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you with stuff that people invented before computers were even actually around. It's pretty interesting. So could you say in some ways there'd be a more sophisticated way of making this? Yes, you could. Would the guy that made it himself back then make it in a more sophisticated way now? Most likely he probably would, to be honest with you, but he's done it and it's good, and it speaks to the sort of it shows you what it needs to show you, and that's fine. So let's understand what that is, and that's what we're doing here. Okay, dokie. So what other things would we like to be able to make a comparison on looking back the way? What if we wanted to, for instance, look at how the price is performing now versus how it was performing in the past, right? Just if we wanted to be able to do that. We've wanted to look at where we've come over the last 52 days. We've kind of done that. We wanted to look at the highs and lows in that period so far. We've kind of done that a bit. And we want to know as well, we'll break this down a bit more because we want to know the implication of these things a bit more as well, with regards to the trend. But, we can at least see this, and we've got an idea about certain things and about how the high up here in the last 9 days is high, and the 52-day one will obviously come down to that area, etc., etc. So we know a few things about that. How about we want to make a comparison between this period time and this period time purely in terms of price? One way that you could do it would be to simply just do this. Let me just take a drawing from the close, and we're not closed today yet, so we'll just take it from the most recent close and price, the market price, and I'll draw a line connecting all of the closes. So here's the close here, go down to that close over there, that close there, there's that close there, that one there, down here, following that up the way to there, go down, following those closes like that, then over to that close, then up to that one, so on and so forth as I do this. Now I'll just do this for a little chunk of time. Obviously this takes a while to do, and it's fiddly and all that sort of stuff. But so we've got a chunk of price. So this is one way you'd be able to do this. We could simply just take the price then that we have had, all our closes, and move it back 26 periods. So if I just make this match up, there we go. Then we can easily compare where the prices are now to where they were 26 days ago. Going back 26 days, we can say in terms of, are we trending? What way are we trending? Well, we can see that when we were over here and the prices were bubbling around about here, the current prices are up here, but when we were looking at the prices, comparing to the prices that we've just had over there 26 periods ago, we're higher than it, as we can see. Look, let's make a comparison. Oh, look, the prices are higher. Looking back over there, you can see that in this period of time, the 17th of September, compared to where the 26 periods ahead of that, the price was actually lower than we were closing over there. So we were closing higher back then than we were over here. Then back in, and you can do various things. So we know that how the price performed here, and looking back over to the past, we can say, well, if we wanted to know back then on the 24th of September, how is our price looking compared to how it was looking 26 days ago? Maybe I'll just look back over, see this squiggly green line that I drew, look up and say, oh, it's a big chunk down below that area. Okay, so there's a component that we can just kind of leave there. That's obviously not going to be super useful to everybody, but there you have it. That's what that is, right? Then let's say we wanted to understand then how these things really impacted in terms of the trend and moving past certain areas of these things. What would be a good way to do it? Well, one way, of course, that J. Wildos Jr. kind of thought about was this true range concept. And there's been plenty of different ideas over history when it comes to understanding things. But the way that we've always kind of ended up tending to do things is simply along the lines of just a simple sort of average, right? So if I have a piece of string and it's that long, okay, and you've got a piece of string and it's that long, right? Then on average, how much string do we have combined? Well, what you would do is you would take the two pieces of string, put them next to each other, right? Then what you would do is you would go 50% between them. An easy way of doing this is to take out a Fibonacci Retracement tool and simply not use any of the other. This is just an easy way of finding 50% between two lines, because the 50% level on here is precisely that. So if I just put on the 0, the 1, and the 5, there's where 50% is. That's handy for us, right? So this is how much string we have each on average is this much, okay? We've got this much string each on average. So that's how much string we have on average. This is how much string you have, this is how much string I have, and we each have, on average, that much string, right? So we understand what an average is, and we understand it from using the timeless phrase, how long is a piece of string? Well, on average, if I have a piece of string which is this long, an arbitrary length, and you have a piece of string which is that long, another arbitrary length, then what's the average length of pieces of string? Well, we can say that it's this long, and it's quite easy to do that. Now, the same way that this would work if I were to measure these things out, if I were to actually measure them and say, well, we're going to take a number here and it's going to be 68.68. Oh, that was a funny number, 68, and I owe you one. Then up here, if you're looking up, then you'd have 20.65. You'd add 68.68 to 20.65, and then you would divide it by 2, and you would come up with that number. I just did that in a visual way, okay? So you understand where that came from. Well, how does that pertain to, how do we then able to understand the average price in a period of time with regards to looking at the highs and the lows? What's the price been on average? And there's various different ways of doing this, one of which is to use moving averages. If I just stick on some moving averages, for example, you can see here, I think this is the 9 period I've set this to just now in terms of that white dotted line. That's what the 9 period, that's what the 9 period moving average looks like. And this what this is saying to us is, if we take this piece of string, this piece of string, this piece of string, this piece of string, for 9 of them, add them all together like I did here, and then divide it by 9, so we get an average of them, then where would each of them appear with this line going back 9 periods, every single dot that's formed? So from this dot, it was back 9. From this dot, it was back 9. From this dot, it was back 9. Average, 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 average. That's one way of doing it. And you'll be very familiar with them, obviously, because of even just things like the coronavirus and the rolling average, etc., that we're looking at. Now, there's another way of doing the same sort of thing, and you'll have learned this back in math school and whatever, back in the day when you went to math school, about how you can, just instead of like looking at every single individual one, you can just take the highest point and the lowest point and operate off the back of them. Sure you can. So how would that look? Well, there's a couple of things here then that we can discover if we were to do that. Let's use these French flags to do it. Ooh la la, French flag. So the 52 period one, is going to be coming in there at 3.99. Now, what I'll do here, just to kind of make it so that we've got markers to know where this is coming in at, I'll use a couple of rays. I'll use rays here, horizontal ray, and I'll just stick it off to the right-hand side so we can see where this would be lining up at. Or should I use horizontal line? I'll use horizontal lines so that we don't get confused about things, right? I'll just pop one on top of that there, and I'll make this color. I'll make it a color so that we can see which specifically this one was later on. I'll make it this sort of pink color like that, right? So we know that this is the midpoint between these two areas. That's the 50% area between these two. That's the average. That's if you were to take the height here of that number, 490, and you were to add it to 308.84. If you were to do those two calculations, get the sum of that, divide it by 2, it would add up to 399.96, right? That's that. Visual, done for us, understood. Let's do the same thing with regards to the next period. So we had a low over here and a high here. So in the past 26 days, so this is the past 52 days. In the past 26 days, we have this one here. Just drag it up, and we can see that if you were to add that number onto that number, then divide it by 2, what you'd have is 376.95. I'm going to stick another horizontal line in here for this one. I'm going to make this one a nice blue color for us. Okay, so this is going to be this color, right? Then we'll do a third one. And we'll take it from the high that we had here as well, because this is obviously the highest high of the last 26 days and the last 9 days, having come quite recently in the past. And this is the low of the last 9 days over here. So we have this average coming in at 391.42. So I'll take another horizontal line here. And I'll make this one yellow. Right, make this one a nice yellowy color, this citrusy color over here. Make it that color, right? So, right, we have those 3 lines there. Now, what we can say about these things is that this red one is the longest period. It's the slowest moving to change because we know that the time will have to go on quite a bigger chunk to move past these extreme ranges, right? We know that this is obviously an expression of the midpoint of a range between these 3 areas. We know that this yellow one is the most recent of which is using this high, which is the same high as the 26 period ago one, but it's got a smaller low in there, and it's more up to date with the high and low of the price action in the last 9 days compared to the last 26. We know that that's more up to date. The 26, of course, being between those two, using this low over here and the high that the most recent one is also using as well. And we can say that there's a relationship between this yellow and blue line, which is of note, which is interesting to say that this is the very near period time. This is the very older period of time. It's a very older period of time, whatever. What's the relationship between these two? Let's do this trick one last time and make an average between these two averages, right? So let me just grab this thing, if it will permit me to. It's fiddly. Pop the bottom line there. This is the same calculation. We're looking at how long is the pieces of string for this line, and it comes in here at the 50%. Let's pop one final piece of the puzzle onto here with a horizontal line just there. And we can say that this is an average. And of course, this is just for today. This is where these lines are for today. And that every day that goes by, this will have a different calculation, obviously, with the new information, yada, yada, yada. Depending on whether or not we push past the prices of these ranges, okay? As opposed to the moving average, which will always be updated every day or every period that you move on, because there's always going to be a new piece of information. Even if that piece of information is the same as the previous piece of information, it'll change the structure of the overall average by virtue of the fact that you're looking at a different total number divided by the periods that you're looking at. Whereas this here, we're talking about a range, okay? So you can understand that slight little distinction there. And let's color this line in a nice green sort of color. I don't know what green to use. this one, let's call it that green, right? So we have those 4 different lines just there. Right, okay. Now then, how about we also want to look into the future when it comes to understanding horizontal support and resistance zones. You know, if we know that something happened in the past and we want to stick it over there in the future and say something happened in the future. No, sorry, what am I saying? This historical information from the past is going to be relevant for the future in terms of where support and resistance could be. Looking at it from not the point of view of where the extremes are, but where the middle point between those extremes were. And if we understand Dow theory and how Dow himself, how I make jokes about Dow far too often on the channel. He was a guy back in the day, right? And because of him, there's this thing called the Dow Jones, and it's, you know, big stuff, right? And he was a smart guy, and he said back before anybody had invented any of this technical analysis stuff, almost hard, you know, worth talking about. That's such a massive reduction, so overly reductionist, especially considering that this candle chart here itself is thousands of years old. Dow came up with this theory that when something goes up, it must come down, right? Well, actually, Isaac Newton came up with that theory. Apples go up, they must come down, right? He called it gravity. And then you have Dow, who furthered that theory by saying, yeah, it won't always come all the way down, though. Quite often, it just goes down like 50% and then moves on again. And why he came up with that theory is simply the same sort of basis for understanding, you know, that thing I did with the strings earlier on, where you've got a piece of string, I've got a piece of string. Well, what's the length of a piece of string? Well, let's just kind of 50%. Back in the day, you used to become almost immortally famous for coming up with, you know, your name will be remembered forever because you came up with something like that. That's because simplicity is often the case, is often true. Anyway, all that sort of stuff stands the test of time. Here we are. So let's look at this. So this is the 50% areas, and we'll call this red one here. Since it's so long, let's take this red one and chuck it into the future and say there's going to be in 26 days, so in the guts of a month. Let's remember in 26 days from now, here, let's remember that the prices will, you know, potentially find resistance or support should they be coming close to this area. Yeah, there you go. That's it, right? That's all we need to know because it's half the range of over here, and that makes sense, right? Let's just remember that in 26 days that this prices that everything that we've achieved up to this point here has resulted in this red line existing in 26 days. Let's take a note of that for us then. So let's just put a wee X on it here or whatever, right? And then also as well, let's remember that in 26 days, another one, but what of these 3 remaining ones? We've already used the slowest moving one. Of these 3 remaining ones, what shall we use to make a comparison? Well, we don't want to put 3 lines up here, and we don't want to arbitrarily select one of the 2 main ones when we have this third option here, which is an average between those 2 main ones. So let's remember, not only will we remember where the median line has been between the extreme high and low of the previous 52 days in the future as terms of potential support or resistance or whatever, or, you know, significant area in terms of price. Let's also remember the midway point between the moving averages of the extreme highs and lows of the last 9 days and 26 days, and say, well, you know, if this is going to be a little sort of consistently updating number as to where we have the most recent average of the average support area, which is kind of like the MACD again, then let's use this line here. So we'll put a little X just there for that as well. So we'll remember where these 2 numbers were. So and currently it's of note that the most recent price action, the average between the extreme high, which is here, and the extreme low in the 9 days ago period, is that the average of it is up there where this yellow line is, whereas the 26 day ago period and this high, the average of it is down here where this blue line is, and the average of those 2 lines is here where this green line is, and that's what we're going to compare to the slow moving 52 period high and low extreme end of things. Right. Okay, and that will give us an idea about the future. Then we have also got this sort of somewhat comparable point here about the past, and we know how this is all constructed. Now, ladies and gents, it's time. How long has this been? About 3 hours? 28 minutes? Fuck. Now, ladies and gents, it's time to take a look at how the Ichimoku cloud would look on top of all of this stuff. Now that we understand this price in relation to the construction of the frickin' thing. Let's stick it on here and go show. And I will start, but I'll not overwhelm you. I'll start by putting on one line at a time. You will see here in the background where I have the settings box that these colors match up with the ones I've already been doing. Oh my God, it's almost like I sort of kind of like had this idea in mind. Let's hope it all works, okay? The proof is in the pudding. I mean, I didn't, you know, let's just see, hey? Let's just see. The conversion line first, right? The conversion line first. Actually, no, wait, I tell you what. Before we put the conversion line on, let me just get rid of this green squiggly one, because I think that's probably the most mess that we have on the chart. And people are mess sensitive, aren't they, in this super sensitive 21st century that we live in. Let's just pop on the lagging span. And if I zoom on in here, how do we see in terms of a job? How good a job did I do? Oops, let me just make it so that the lagging span is actually really visible. Well, my drawing wasn't like, you know, the best drawing, but I did, you know, I tried. As you can see here, I went a bit too far over to the left and to spin round and do a wee loop on myself. You can see I got pretty close though, pretty close. That's what this is. This lagging span is simply the current price closes, okay, of the price. So this candle here, it closed there, not the wicks, but the closes of where the prices were, put 26 periods in the past. And what this is called something like the Chiku line, you know, like Pikachu or something like that. It's a Japanese word. It has a meaning. It means that this is a line that is lagging in the past, right? What's the basis of this? What's the point of it? Well, you can make comparisons between, like, you know, the price action, you know, here we can say, well, how is the price action that we've got currently compared to the past? Well, we know that compared to what it was the guts of a month ago, that we're up above that. You can make that comparison quite easily and go all the way back. Now, there's a couple of things that you could try and use this tool for in terms of strategies. Like I say, you can go ahead and watch those other videos out there on YouTube and decide yourself in terms of strategies of things like that. This here is just just simply translates as looking at how we are in relation to the prices 26 days ago. The fact that this all connects up in lines is a function of the fact that we, you know, prices, you know, the world keeps going on and on and on. Would it be better if this was maybe in a different format? I personally think so. I think if you were to use crosses, for instance, it would be better in a sense than the line, but people use a line for whatever way. If you use circles, for instance, it would be better, because then at least you get a more of a view of how this is really kind of meant to be interpreted, in the sense that instead of having a load of squiggles over your chart, what you've got instead is what this looks like, this random braille, this dots, but we can at least make a comparison between how the prices were, and we can do certain things like look for like equilibrium. For instance, we know that 26 days after the candle closed over here down at this low on the 25th of August, that we actually had another close right at the same point as that one, for instance. You can make kind of assessments like that. Now, how actual useful and virtuous this is will all come down to how you choose to trade and use it on your own methodology. I tend to use various other things anyway, such as moving averages and stuff like that on the charts, and I have a fair enough idea of the trend and able to balance this information in my head. Is it useful? Well, at a glance, when we talk about the sort of the name of this thing, at a glance, it's useful, okay? Because it gives you an idea, you know, looking back the way, I suppose. But in terms of like the extreme study of this thing, it's not extremely useful, and people quite often use it as simply a condition on whether or not to trade. So it's more to do with the strategy rather than the actual numbers that we're looking at there, other than the things that I just spoke about, which are to do with looking at the numbers and the trend and whatnot. Okay, then let's stick on the next line that we've got through that section. God. This video. By the way, these videos that I make, they're all just my own knowledge, and I'm just sharing it with you, and I don't script it out in advance, but I feel like I feel like this works for people, and if you're enjoying it, let me know. You know, hit the thumbs up button, leave a subscribe, comment, all that stuff, and share it with your friends, because they might find this useful. all this information. So the conversion line, this is the same color as that yellow line. And as we can see, it comes in there bang on where we drew it. Phew! Our maths worked. And that is showing us then, of course, as we already discussed, where the highest high was and the lowest low of the previous 9 days to when this was actually popped onto the chart here as when this was drawn on, and it shows, the midway point between them. As we see, looking back the way, over here, for example, that we saw that there was a new high came in here on that day, and of course then this forced the conversion line up a little bit, and then it went sideways for a few days. As you can see, there was no higher highs or higher lows in the next few days, so it went flat. So unlike a moving average, you'll see that these things go flat from time to time. Of course, it's harder to make that point on this quickest of moving ones, but as I put them on more, you'll see that of course that happens quite a bit. Right, then let's hide that one for now and put on the baseline. We'll discuss the words and why they're called this. God, this video goes on for too long. Might have to remake it. Anyway, this is the baseline, and it's blue, and as you can see, bang, perfectly with that one. So, and as you can see, greater periods of sideways movement on this thing because of the longer duration that you're looking back for, and then therefore the less likelihood that there's been extreme highs and lows outside of those ranges. And if they had been, then it would have affected the closer moving period as well as the older one, by virtue of the fact that we've got that 3 rectangle system, that we're not making comparisons of the current price, we're not making comparisons between 3 isolated periods of time. We're making comparisons between now to 9 days ago, now to 26 days ago, now to 52 days ago, and then the 3 comparisons within those structures themselves going forwards again to come up with these lines. And that's how this system comes together. So then looking at the Ichimoku cloud again, that's the baseline. Taking that, we've already done the lagging span one. Then we have these 2 other lines, the lead line and the, have I got one of these colors wrong? No, I don't. The lead line and the second lead line, to 2 of them. Let's put on the first lead line first. Oh, look at that, bang on with our green line. So the average between the yellow and the blue, the conversion and the baseline, comes in here where this one is, and that is then positioned 26 bars into the future. Like I said, let's just remember in the future where we were 26 bars ago, yada, yada, yada. And that essentially is, in essence, a way of forcing you to think along the lines of trends. It forces your brain into looking at it and saying, this is a trend. This is how are we versus the future. It's like if you had a picture of a stone on a hill. Okay, you got a hill. Let me just do this. You got a hill, and on this hill there's a stone, and it's just here, and you got a picture of it. You've probably got an idea that this stone on this hill is moving in one of these 2 directions, right? Because you're a human being, you're looking at it, but gravity, all this, but you don't know. Then if somebody were to give you a picture that had instead on it, these lines like that, or whatever, kind of, behind it, you might think, maybe if I was a better cartoonist, that this is showing you that the ball is rolling up the hill, right? That's what it would show you. Whereas if you had these wee lines popping out behind it, you might think, oh, look, there's a ball and it's rolling down the hill. Did you get it? Did you get it? That's what we're doing here, right? That's what we're doing here. And beforehand, all you had was a picture that looked like this. And you're like, what the fuck is that, man? I don't know what you're showing me. Now I've explained to you hill, ball, movements, everything. I hope that you can see this thing fitting together now, right? Okay, that's why I'm doing it this way. That's why this video is different from the other ones on YouTube. Is it worth the challenge? Who knows? I certainly think it's worth the challenge, but objectively speaking, who could possibly say? Right, so then you also then have this final line that we haven't quite popped on yet, the final piece of the puzzle, and that is lead number 2. And where does that come in at? Well, oh my word, it's hard to actually see, but for the majority of time here, it came in where we were. I obviously got my numbers slightly wrong here with working this one out because it's dipped just below. Oh my God, a complete failure. I'm such a fail. I'll never live this moment down. I'll never live it down. Right. So cool. So we can see how these things are all constructed, right? The maths, obviously I've chosen something wrong along the way. Clearly something has changed between today and, yesterday or whatever. So I've positioned something slightly wrong. I've drawn a box. Maybe this line's back 53 periods instead of 52. That would make sense. Maybe that needs to be there. Maybe this is the actual high over here, right? Maybe that's what we're looking at. I think that would obviously then. Do I need for fullness to do this? I suppose I do now that I've started speaking about it. God, right? So there we go. You didn't trust me. You didn't trust me. There you go. Now you can see it lines up. So that was why that had happened, right? Okay, so now you can trust me. God. Right, I can get rid of that French flag as well. And we can get rid of our 2 X's. Now, what if we wanted to make it so that this was more visually appealing in general and then had a meme-tastic type name to it or whatever? What could we do? Or what could we do if we wanted to construct this differently just for our own viewing pleasure as well, etc.? Well, if I just bring back up the options again and I hide off these 2, you can just simply have the plot background, so you know what the lines are, you know why they're being constructed, and you can see that there's these areas. And you can also see why we thought about these as being resistance. Now, they're not resistance because of some hocus pocus or some magic. The reason why there'd be resistance or support is because we're looking back and saying, well, during this chunk of 52 candles going back the way, bearing in mind as well that if this 52 candles, if we were looking at it from this period over here, included all of this price action on the run up with this extreme high and this extreme low as well, so you can see then we'd be thinking, well, look, just somewhere in this middle region here is going to be, of significance for us in the future. Let's take a note of that. And then we'll also be aware of it when the prices come there, and we'll not have to look back and do all the maths for it because we understand why, because of that ball on the hill with the wee lines behind it understanding, which is what we've achieved here. Pardon me. Right. You can also put the lines on there if you want to have them there to make it so that it's, more clear. You can get a clearer view of the cross, I suppose. It really depends, obviously, on your styling of the thing, obviously. You could mess it up completely if you wanted to by doing things like this. This is not how it should be done, because you're covering up way too much of your screen, etc. You could do other things like have it more jaggedy looking as well if you want to, which is maybe in a sense a more accurate way of doing it than having a line where you're connecting. You see these curves on here, when in fact, in actual fact, it should be more like one of these sorts of things, really, in terms of how it looks on the chart. So you can do whatever you want to in that sense. You can keep the lagging span on or take it off if you want to use it for your strategy. And of course, you go ahead and watch all those strategy videos that are out there if you want to. How do I feel about it? Well, I feel that it's almost redundant, really. But if in terms of looking at this here, you could say little things like, for instance, I'll not trade when the lagging span is within the cloud. The lagging span is within the cloud right here. So while you've got, if we then when we put on the next 2 lines, which are your signal sort of lines, if there's a positive signal telling me that I should go long at this point, I'll not take it because we're in the cloud. That might then, it has a big enough impact on your risk to prevent you from getting, wrong. You also could say things like, well, are we trading above or below the line? Is the lagging span is the lagging span above the cloud? And what you're really doing is saying, if I take the price action from now and compare it and put it back 26 periods ago and pop it here, how does it compare to the price action, which was an average of 72 bars ago? Because 52 plus 26 is what? 77 bars ago, right? Did that maths right? Did I? Yeah. So you're looking at 77 bars ago is what formed these things, because there was a calculation for the 52 bars back from 26 periods ago. So you're looking at between this 26 period line and the full distance back to come up with the information we have on the charts just here, right? So we're saying, how's the price action from now in comparison to how the future projection of the price action was from 72 bars ago, and we're making a comparison that way. And essentially what you're saying is that if the price action now is higher than it was 72 bars ago, we're in a trend and we're trading with the trend, right? That's what that translates to. That's how it all fits together. So while this here is tend to be spoken about as future projection, what we're really looking at as well when we're looking at this is price action from 72 periods ago, or 77 periods ago, in relation to where we are right now. What formed this basis line was 77 bars ago. This candle here, and this one, 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 were all part of the calculation of what formed this horizontal line that we have, that we've moved above now in terms of price action, which could have been conceivably resistance from that period back then. In the future, when we get to this point, we'll be looking at the period from the previous 52 days from now as to how this is formed, and therefore that's how this all ties together. So while it can be quite simple to just have one eyeball over here look into the future and say that your other eyeball is over here looking to the past, and that you're making some sort of comparison that way, the actual fact, right here as well, in this middle booby, is where you've got the real sort of overlay of the past and the future together, including, if you're looking at the lagging line, where the current price is in relation to all of it on top of itself. Okay, so that's really the understanding of what we're looking at here. This is what the Japanese people who look at this and came up with this in the first place were seeing, not just myopically looking to the future and saying this is going to be a prediction, a crystal ball for us, not just myopically looking purely to the past and saying, well, the current prices at this point here are above our the prices back in the day, and therefore we're trending, but an amalgamation of all of them coming in at the current price, where we can see that the current prices are now above where they were 77 bars ago in terms of their extreme high and low in relation to that point. We know where we are in regards to moving with or against a trend. Therefore, we can then have these things laid out in certain ways, such as we can put this as a red box below us, because we know that the trend over the previous 52 days or so has actually been lower than the trend, or the 26 and 9 period average trend over the last month, has been lower than the price action was over the previous 2 months, when we're looking back from the period starting 77 days ago to now, where we are here, and we have moved up above that zone. So while the price action is above that zone, that in fact we have this area here showing us that recently the price action must have been below that zone, and that we've moved past a degree of downward price action in order to get to where we are now, as opposed to over here where we moved down past upward price action, which is why it was green. So does this green mean go? It doesn't. Does this red mean stop? It doesn't. Does it mean something else entirely? It does. Would it maybe be better for you to have them, instead of being green and red, some other colors, so you don't feel like they're traffic lights telling you to go and stop? Quite possibly. That, I think, is going to do for this episode, right? And, yeah. No, it's not going to do. I haven't put the baseline and the conversion line on. Sorry, close one. I'm going to leave that line in there because these things don't get edited by me. I deliberately don't edit them because I appreciate the fact that somebody out there watching, when they see these cuts that happen on YouTube, are thinking, what did the person say then? Why has he gone back on himself? Why has he deleted that bit out? Let me be the one that decides. You concentrate on your job, try and do it as good as you can, and let me be the one to decide when you're talking shit is shit, when it's funny, when it's a joke, whatever. Because I, as the presenter in this case, believe in you as the audience to be able to do that, right? I believe in you. I don't think I need to edit this stuff so you can decide what's pertinent or not. You're smart enough for it. You're here watching it at the minute. So let's put these two lines back on then and make a little bit of a chat about the fact that these are indeed averages of a different sort to moving averages. Right, I'm going to just let me remove these brush marks, right? Gosh. And let me just get rid of the lagging span. Now, instead of getting rid of it, what I'm going to do is just shove it back down to being hardly visible at all, and put it back on the line structure, just so that it's like more similar to what you'll see on other people's videos, and etc., and more like ICHIMOKU style, but more ignorable for me as well, to be perfectly frank with you. Then looking here, you can see that that we've had certain things happen to us. Like we had a crossover here between the yellow and the blue. Actually, it crossed back over here, and then they were just positioned the same way. Key takeaways from this is that, of course, that when you have some extreme price action happening recent to the prices, that what you're going to see is an overlay between, if you have it high and low in the previous 9 days, then of course and that exceeds the highs and lows of the previous 26 days, and indeed the previous 52 days, then you'll see overlap occurring between these coins, or between these lines. As we see here in the last 26 days and 52 days, there had been extreme highs and lows which were the same. So the blue and the baseline and the leading span 2 lined up with each other perfectly here, whereas over here in the previous 9 days it had actually gone higher than that zone, as you can see looking back. So the yellow one was higher than it, and so on and so forth, and we'll see various interaction like that with these two lines here as we go forwards. Then as well, we saw a cross between them just here. At the time of this cross, the price action was below this cloud here, so plenty of people would have said not to trade it, because you're breaking rules. You don't take a long when you're below a cloud. That's essentially working along the same way as a triple moving average strategy would. That's the TMA, the triple moving average, triple exponential, triple simple moving average, whatever, just a 3 moving average setup, simple idea. In general, do I agree or disagree with that principle? Well, I know that statistically speaking, that actually just doing a dual moving average and trading off of crosses is statistically better, more profitable, and easier to manage and better trading than using a triple moving average system, funnily enough, even though we're talking about trend. But it really depends on the length of time that you're looking to stay within your trades for. If you're a reasonable trader looking to do something between swing trading and scalping, and a mixture of all of them, then a dual system is certainly better for you than a triple. Could you have taken a long off the back of that? Then I suppose you could have. Looking up here, being aware of the sort of so-called support and resistance. Now, there are going to be interactions between this of screw it. This message, this episode is going to last an hour. We're 50 minutes in now. I'm going to do a couple other little things. Actually, you might as well just enjoy what we've got here together. You and I, it's so special. Thanks for joining me. And if you stuck through till now, then I'm sure you're getting value from this. So yeah, you could have traded this here, and we've got this resistance. As you can see, we were operating in and around about that, and then we moved up towards the top side thereafter, breaking through the cloud. Now, there's a few other little things I'd like to point out, is that prices do like to attack the narrow points in the clouds. The clouds being these, what I'm talking about as well, again, being these continental chunks, these areas which are like Mediterranean islands or British imposed Asian continents or African continents. Like this is like South Africa here. Right, just keep going then, I suppose. Sorry about that. Yeah, we're looking at the clouds here, the islands. There's we like to attack them at their Panama points, right? At the weak points. That the prices tend to go through them better at the points where they're kind of converged like that, as you'll see here. So this island here was drawn on obviously 26 days in advance of the prices. So back over here, this island was visible, and then we did kind of attack it through that line, if you like to think about it like that. This, you can see that we had this bit of the narrowing of the gap here. And we decided that it would be best to go through Panama rather than to go through New Mexico or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You get the idea that they like to go through the path of least resistance, if you like. So there's something to be looking out for. Coming into this zone here, you can see that while we kind of did that, but we also didn't. Another thing to look out for here is how we had the wicks coming in here right at the area shown by our baseline. Now, this baseline is an average, of course, the extreme highs and lows and the 50% point. So it's more like kind of looking at at how we found resistance in around about a 50% Fibonacci retracement point in around these areas, looking back 26 periods before. It's just, I've been at this an hour now, right? Most people's concentration span lags after 15 minutes. I've been at this an hour. So 77 bars back, sorry. We're looking for the moving average, the Fibonacci point, the lowest low in 72 bars, which is down here. The highest high in from 26 bars back the way was this one here. So the Fibonacci then goes down to this point here, and then there we see, and it lines up perfectly with this area of resistance. But taking away the ICHIMOKU cloud and just kind of thinking about how we were performing with regards to this trend, we were coming in at around about these areas of the 50%. So you can see why this kind of fiddles together and how this is a different way of looking at it. Instead of trying to impose some sort of belief system on top of the ICHIMOKU cloud, how actually understanding the components and how it all fits together is going to show you why we found sort of support and resistance at these areas with a greater level of understanding than simply saying because cloud isn't a very good explanation at all in any way whatsoever, and leaves you at a dead end when it comes to actually conducting yourself in the markets, whereas understanding it from this perspective leaves you empowered and able to understand what you're being told. Okay, in the way that the people that made it wanted to understand it, not in the way that some guy looking to get 350,000 views on YouTube wanted to understand it. Please excuse me if this video ever gets to that level. I highly doubt it. I think something in the region of 175 views is probably its best bet. We'll see. Anyway, we can see how that interaction continued in terms of the 50% along the way. But obviously, as the highs got higher, then you're looking at the moving up the way. Then obviously, as we moved forward in the future and you're looking back just 52 periods, then it changes the dynamic of the way that this thing flows on here. And of course, therefore, your cloud takes on different shapes. Whereas the limitations of it, of course, then do come into play again when you're wanting to say to yourself, well, no, actually, this was a really significant area here in price action back there in terms of our most recent low, our actual proper low before we had this big impulse up. And we also know that high, extreme high, was another area for understanding in terms of price action, etc., etc. You can accommodate this by, changing the levels that you're using, the numbers. Like, so instead of looking back a certain period, you can change those settings and by all means look back further in time, as you can do here with the different period settings, of course. And people like to do that, especially with cryptocurrency operating over the weekend instead of just like they do in traditional land with including, with the lack of weekends. Therefore, 9 days is nearly 2 weeks. 26 days is nearly a month. Well, it's more than a month. 20 days isn't a month, when you're doing it on a 4-week basis. So you're looking at like just over a month to just under 2 weeks, etc., with your comparison. This obviously does chime with the MACD in terms of 9 and 26, if that's interesting to you. And yeah, so hide all the drawings. Pop the ICHIMOKU back on in all of its glory, and you can see then that story now. I hope that you can see this story of everything that we talked about so far, including as well just there now with that little exploration with the moving averages and the dynamic between these areas, and you'll understand how this all works. Now, there's one last thing that I would like to do before tuning out, and that is, of course, making a little comparison with moving averages. So let me just bring up the this moving average thingy that I've got on the go here. This is the 9-period moving average. If I hide everything off the ICHIMOKU apart from the other lines, then you'll go away with a complete full understanding of this thing. There's your moving average in comparison to with the 9-period moving average versus simple moving average versus the ICHIMOKU conversion line, right? So you got an inclusion of every single last period in terms of how long is a piece of string. Let's divide it by 9, and then you've got the extreme highs and lows. Like, how long is a piece of string? Well, Dave's was like 20 centimeters, and Sheila's was 1 centimeter. So it's somewhere between 27 and 1 and 9. That's called the median average, right? The median, isn't it? Yeah, the median. So what you have is a mean. This is the moving average is a mean, and then you've got the median average of the ICHIMOKU, right? So you understand that from what your maths. Now you could impress your maths teacher from when you were 14 or whatever. Let's then make a comparison between the conversion line, which is of course 26 periods, and a 26-period moving average. 26. You can see here then the smoothing effect that has and the differences between them, of course. Then let's do the same thing here, but we'll go for a 52-period moving average, and we will swap that out for the baseline. the lead 2, swap that out, and you can see here that this is that they're offset by 26. So just to make make this comparison easier, I'm going to change the displacement of the Ichimoku down to 1. So you can see here the comparison points then between how this works with the moving averages. Right, okay, so you've got a full, complete, thorough understanding now of this. Let's look again then at a comparison on the final stage of this comparison. Let's look at between the base, the lead 1, the final component here, and then another moving average. And let's instead do things slightly differently. And I'll compare this. Well, given that we've got these 2 lines are what make it, I'll compare it with the 18 exponential moving average. So here, if I got this set to 18, yeah. So you can see that between these 2 lines, if this is 9 and this is 26, 18 is somewhat in between the 2 of them. And I've made it the exponential moving average just for the crack here. And you can see that it responds more quickly to recent price action. And that's why I wanted to do it like that, because I think an exponential moving average is possibly more closely aligned with a median of 9 periods versus 26, right? So let's not... It's too long a video already. 18 periods there between these 2, and you can see the interaction between the yellow and the green. If I then just move the displacement of this guy back down again to 1, and then hide the conversion and the baseline, then you can see how this is kind of like that moving average projected out into the future as well, and how the interaction between this price action goes. You'll also see how this lines up where we're between the highs and the lows, and you can see it here if I make it really bold or thick or something, right? You can see this line coming up here between these highs. Put the displacement back into the future, 26. And you can see how this then here is showing us the potential sort of so-called resistance with regards to 50% between these extreme highs and lows. Take out another one of these French flags. Pop it in here. You can see that the 50% area between that came in and lined up perfectly with this flattening area of this after we had those highs. So we had the highs coming in here, had the highs. We hadn't had the lows coming in quite yet. We had the lows. There's your 50% area. It's projected out into the future. If you're using one of these Fibonacci things over a period of time, you'd be looking up the way, and you can see the interaction between all of that. And you can also understand how it's somewhat similar to a 21 EMA, which is obviously then being displaced off 26 periods to the right. If I just pop that back again so you can see how it lines up with that. Okay, there you go. Right now you actually understand this thing in its extreme fine detail. Go ahead, watch all of those other videos now about strategies and whatnot. Choose your own strategy, let it inform your trading. It will absolutely help you. Oh my goodness, though, this has been one long video. I'm now going to go on and actually make videos for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tezos and Chainlink videos for today. So if you subscribe to the channel, you'll see that. Of course, this one's just, doesn't matter about time. You'll be able to see this at any point in time in the future, and it won't make a difference to what you're watching. You're going to learn the same lessons nevertheless. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you've got the value from this. I put my heart and soul into these episodes, by the way. I really do believe in you when I say that. I believe in you massively. I know that you can become a great trader in your own right, and use your own brain and succeed. And I'm here trying to give you those tools to do that on your own, as opposed to trying to be here, put myself up on some sort of pedestal and get loads and loads of followers to come along and say that I'm great, because I instead have got much more faith in you than I would request and people to have in me in that sense. So as this alarm goes by outside, I should really just say, cheerio, I do believe in you. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're going to go forwards with the ICHIMOKU cloud now, understanding it, and I don't think there'll be another video that's like this one on YouTube for it. All the best. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.